right there. One of the most important things ever to happen to personal protection. Not the ammo can, but what's in it. That right there. I want to talk with you today about the 9mm, the 9 ball, the 9 Luger, the 9x19. How the heck is this little cartridge so popular, so widespread around the world, and been around just so dang long? Mickey with CarryTrainer.com. I think this is worth talking about. So let's do a little history on this. And I'm not going to go deep in the weeds, but George Luger comes from a kind of a affluent background. His father's a surgeon. He gets to go to a really good school in Italy. He joins the military. He's a really good shooter. Gets like designated like expert marksman or something. This is like late 1880s, I'm guessing, 1890s. And he runs into a dude by the name of Ferdinand von Mannlicher. Now, how cool is that? Why don't you and I get to hang out with dudes named Ferdinand von Mannlicher? Ferdinand, pretty well-known firearm designer. In fact, one of the preeminent firearm designers of that generation. He gets to work on some stuff with this dude. One of those pistols makes its way to the U.S. The U.S., I don't remember the name of it, but it's worth you looking up, says, no way, this thing's a piece of crap, we're not going to use it. Part of the reason that that pistol didn't get used was the cartridge. Well, old George says, I think I can make this better. And he improves not only the gun, but the cartridge. And this comes out of it, the 9x19. Now, first of all, when we say 9mm, we're talking about the diameter of this. There are other cartridges like a 9x23, 9x21, etc. There's a 9mm Kurtz, which is a shortened version of this. And so to say 9mm is, for most of us, we're meaning the 9x19, but if you go other places, there are other variations of 9mm pistol cartridges that are not this guy right here. That being said, it becomes really popular around the world to the point that now this is carried by NATO countries and more law enforcement and armed citizens around the population than any other pistol in mankind's history. How long has it been around? This is mind-blowing to me. Almost unchanged for 123 years. Almost 1 century plus another quarter century. So we are just nearing the end of 2024 as I'm filming. 1901, Georgie brings this thing into fruition. Almost completely unchanged. And there's some special stuff about it. There's a slight taper to the case, which really didn't exist. The way that this cartridge is put together added some new things that was not very popular at that time. And why is it so special today? Well, cheap, relatively speaking, small enough that you can kind of carry a lot of it. We'll talk more about that. The components are simple. We got 4 main components to most of these cartridges, right? The projectile, the bullet. We've got the case or brass. We've got the powder, the propellant, and we've got the primer. And of course, those components are made up of other things, right? Bimetal bullets are made up of multiple components. Powder is made up of multiple components. The primer is made up of multiple components. But when you or I go to our loading press and we assemble this, we're using 4 components to make this. Pretty crazy to me when you think about it. I want to compare it to a couple of other cartridges. So I've got a bunch of Supervel out today. And the reason being is that's my ammo. That's my stuff of choice. But I've got some 10 mil. I'm going to throw that up there. I've got some 45 ACP in solid copper. I mean, look at that big fat dude next to that little 9. It's like a little baby. Like, oh, what are you going to do? And that's worth talking about here. 44 mag. Holy hog leg, right? That's worth talking about because that's been around a long time. Old Elmer Keith, he had something to do with that. You guys read about Elmer Keith? Worth looking up. We've got some 38 special. I guess we could toss that in there if we're going by caliber, and the 10 would go here. And this is some smoking hot Supervel 38 special. And then how about the evolution of the 38 special, which would be 357. That's a smoking hot round. Of all of those, the smallest looking cartridge is the one that's become the most popular. Let's go back a step. Why? And of course, this is just a smattering of some common pistol handgun calibers. Why is it? What is the main purpose when we put a sidearm on us? I've got a Glock 17 here, kind of the, I guess, quintessential law enforcement fighting gun on the planet. Doesn't get much more simple and to the point than this. I get 17 rounds of ammunition plus one in the pipe. That's quite a bit of opportunities to stop a bad guy. How does ammunition, any kind, rifle, shotgun, etc., stop a human being? Let's go back one more step. Why would we be trying to stop somebody, be it law enforcement or lawful armed civilian, armed citizen? We're trying to stop somebody from ending our life or somebody else's, or altering our life by maiming us through some type of criminal violence, or an animal. A lot of animal attacks happen out in the world. Most of us are going to want to say bigger is better. When I was coming up in the shooting world, every copper I knew still was carrying the 45 ACP. In fact, there's jokes, right? Like, if it doesn't start with 4, don't show up to work. Things like that were commonly said. And there's something to be said for that. The 38, let's move some of these out of the way. The 38, and this was not the ammunition in usage at the time, was employed during the Philippines, the era where we were at battle in the Philippines. And a lot of reports coming back that these things were not stopping the adversary. Shortly thereafter, this guy was adopted. The 1911 was adopted because of data points. They said, we're shooting these dudes. It's not stopping them. They're running crazy into our ranks, and it's not working. So bigger is better. Not always. How do we stop a bad guy? Through a transfer of energy, right? There's really just 2 very simple mechanisms, maybe 3, depending on how you look at it. Exsanguination, so rapid blood loss. When we remove blood from the system, blood pressure drops. What's really happening when we do that? The brain starves, so the computer shuts off. So really, everything's going to come back to that. Exsanguination or central nervous system damage. So I shut the central nervous system down through direct impact. So shooting or causing damage to the brain itself, the brain stem, or the spinal column in general, where we could cause issues downstream by shutting off the limbs. That's difficult, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Skeletal damage, causing massive damage to the pelvis, the femurs, the humerus bones, etc., where the individual is no longer able to be mobile and fight. But that still is not that incapacitation that we're looking for. So we need to transfer energy into a subject to stop them from being mobile or having the ability to think and reason and tell their parts to move. Once upon a time, a combat medic I do some work with told me, he said, man, these solid projectiles, FMJ, full metal jacket bullets, are really just like a pencil getting poked into a person. There's not a bunch of energy transfer as such. It makes for a neat wound cavity. So that you don't have the exsanguination, you don't have the rapid blood loss, and you're not seeing some of the damage that's required. Now, we go back a little bit in history. I believe 1899, 1907, don't quote me on it, but I think I'm close. The Hague Convention, there's multiple of these over the years, but that is where countries got together and they said, hey, we're not going to use expanding ammunition anymore. We're going to sign off on this, and we're not going to allow soldiers to shoot each other with expanding ammo. A lot of people think that that's why the FMJ has been around as long as it has. Well, little side note, the U.S. never signed that part of the document. So when people say it's against the Geneva Convention or against the Hague Convention, go read about it. This stuff is cheap, it's accurate, it's fairly lightweight to carry. So the problem is when we're using the wrong type of ammunition. Fast forward to the 60s, 70s, 80s, things like the 357, the 38, the 44 mag and the 45, things like 45 long Colt, there just was not many advances in ammunition. I'm showing you right now some of the more cutting edge projectiles on the market. Supervel, by the way, invented the jacketed hollow point back in, I believe, like 1963 for pistols. Pretty dang cool. They've been cutting edge ever since. I'm showing you guys solid copper, monolithic copper projectiles. There's other people that have made them. These guys are kind of cutting edge on this stuff, and that's why I'm showing it to you. The 10 mil that I've got sitting here is an FMJ, and I do have some 10 mil with a very similar projectile to what you see in these others. Back to the point at hand. We've got to transfer energy. So 70s, 80s, 90s, some things take place. The Miami-Dade shooting being one of them, where coppers with 357s are up against dudes with AKs. Wasn't a good time. FBI loses a bunch of people. FBI says, we've got to fix this. So enter Colonel Cooper's 10 millimeter. Colonel Cooper, kind of the guy that really made a lot of what we're talking about and doing today more mainstream, founder of the American Pistol Institute, which became Gunsight. He pushes for this, the Bren 10, right? You guys remember that? Kind of a failed pistol because of magazine production. But this comes to light. Smith & Wesson made some pistols for this, as did a few other companies. And the FBI found out, man, our guys just can't handle the massive recoil from the 10. So what do? They shorten it into what became the 40 Smith & Wesson, thus cutting the legs out from underneath it. And we find out over time that thing's not all it's cracked up to be. It's more expensive than 9. It's harder on the guns, etc. Go a little bit farther into the future, more data is being compiled. What data am I talking about? Guys I know personally, Greg Ellifritz and Claude Werner, aka the Tactical Professor, both did multi-year studies encompassing hundreds, if not thousands, of instances of shootings. They looked at these things from a perspective of what ammunition was used, what caliber, what time of day was it, how many rounds were fired to stop the assailant or assailants, or did they stop at all? Reading this data, one of the things that you'll find is, geez, it seems like all the ammunition's either really good or not at all. It seems like 22 works fine or 38 works fine. The problem with looking at that data and seeing, I'm going to call it a positive outcome, meaning the person trying to defend themselves stopped the bad guy. The problem with seeing a positive outcome for that 22 or that 38 or that 44 or that buckshot, we're sometimes forgetting to see the negative outcomes. One thing that data drawn out over years and years and years, and you can go look at Evan Marshall's work from even farther back. Evan I've got to speak to over the years. Evan was a Detroit police officer that also did a study like this with some different factors. The thing that has been pointed to over and over and over and over again is this: the first relevant hit, meaning is around impacting something that can change the behavior of the assailant. I know 2 men personally that have sat at my kitchen table drinking beer, eating steak, and both of those 2 dudes were shot in the face in different settings. One of them was shot 7 times, fought back and killed his assailant. The second individual was also shot in the face and fought back and killed his assailant. And one day we're sitting at my kitchen table and it dawned on me, and I said, wow, it's pretty dang cool. I got 2 guys, not cool that this happened to them, but cool that they're laughing, they're joking, they're eating, they're drinking beer, and they're living. And they were both shot in the face, the one by a 38, the other by a 45 ACP. Jared Reston, when he was shot, it hit him here and exited out his neck, and then he got shot up a bunch more. Jared fought back, shooting that attacker, who was a 200-pound male, 6 foot tall, with a 40 with duty ammunition, and he had to put a lot of rounds into that guy to stop him, ultimately needing to contact shoot him. Now we hear these stories of one shot or the gun just gets pulled out and somebody stops. That's not a course of action because we cannot rely on that. What we can rely on is this: proper training, quality ammunition, and driving the gun back to the target until we get the desired result, because that's the only thing we can control. We can't control what the other guy or guys do. Back to the 9. So we get all these advances in ammunition, better cartridges, expanding ammunition, more thought-provoking investment of time into things like ballistic testing, barrier blind testing. And what we find is that the 9 does a job that all these other cartridges do, but it does one thing a little bit better. It's cheaper, and I can carry more of it. Enter the argument, well, if you just know how to shoot, you can stop the guy. Again, you get a say-so, but so does he or they. I've got a friend named Tim Grammons. I've interviewed Tim a few times. Tim was involved in a shootout with a bank robber. Tim was carrying 45 ACP. Tim's a SWAT cop. Tim's a shooter. I met Tim at a training that he was at of his own volition. The department didn't send him. He just came to train. And I was looking at him and I'm like, I think I remember seeing you somewhere. And we got to talking and we've since become buddies. I think he actually just retired this year. But Tim got in a shootout where he exhausted all of his ammunition. The dude that he was fighting had 2 handguns, and what Tim didn't know at the time, the guy was fighting his way back to the vehicle where he had a loaded SKS. So think like AK-47 style rifle. And this was in a neighborhood in Skokie, Illinois. Not a place you want a guy lighting off rifle rounds. He won by skipping the last couple rounds that he had, like a Frisbee, skipping them off the street where this guy was hiding behind a vehicle into him to cut him down. And this guy wasn't just hiding, sucking his thumb. He's shooting the whole time. 45 ACP. Now, Tim switched from 45 to 9. He carries something like this, like a 17 or a 34 or something like that. He carries it with a bunch of these on his belt, like extended magazines, 18, 19, 20, 21 rounds. Plus, the last time I saw him, he had a couple of these dudes on his vest. When we look at data, we can say it usually only takes a couple of rounds to solve the problem. It does. But here's the problem with that. We can plan for everything, right? I can have 8 guns, 4 flashlights, a helicopter, a satellite communication system, an emergency doctor with me, and I still might not have the thing I need, another spare tire, right? We cannot plan for every eventuality. It's really simple for us to plan by just having a pistol that carries a decent amount of ammo, high quality ammunition, high quality training that allows us to present the pistol into the fight and direct the rounds where they need to go to stop the threat or threats. 9 is done such a good job of that because it's shootable. I've got videos of me single-handed on a slack line shooting a 44 mag while on 1 foot on a slack line, 1 foot, 1 hand at a piece of steel like 25 yards away. You can control the firearm. Just pictures or videos of us, and actually the tail end of a lot of these videos, I'll throw it on this one, is me shooting a 10 mil, shooting Supervel's 10 millimeter, they're solid copper, dumping rounds into a target with 1 hand. You can control the gun. Not all of us can do that. And I've been injured. I had my dominant arm injured several years ago that I could barely hold a gun. That said, this is easier to shoot for more people. Your mom, your grandma, you or me when we're older or injured or wet or tired. So it provides us a easier platform to do what? To extend our righteous will. That's kind of the way I look at a pistol or a long gun, a baseball bat. It's allowing me to multiply and extend my will. You're trying to impose your will on me, hurt mine, hurt them. I'm going to extend my will back, except I got a trick. I got something you didn't know about, and it's right here. I've got 17 or 18 attempts at stopping you. And hell, if I'm really thoughtful, I might have another one of these in my belt or pocket, right? So the argument of just do your job doesn't take into account all the time that somebody might have on armor, have on heavy clothing, be very mobile and capable. They could be a capable adversary. They may be doped up, drugged up. They might be in a state of psychosis where they're not interested in stopping right now. I've shot deer or seen people shoot animals that have been by all accounts, dead on their feet, and they've moved 100 yards at a full run with their heart and lung shot out. People do that too. In fact, one of my Green Beret friends tells a story about the ineffectiveness of a cartridge he was using where he shot an adversary in battle, I believe in Iraq, and it's at several hundred yards, and this guy's a good shot. He thinks he's missing. He's shooting over and over. He thinks he's missing, and finally this guy goes down. Moving through later, he realized that he was hitting this person. The rounds were just not getting the effect. 9 allows us, helps us, aids us in just being good marksmen. You can do that with all of these rounds, but the older I get, the more people I'm exposed to, it's easier. That's meaningful. So what's our takeaways? This thing's been around 123 years, very little change besides projectiles and some powder upgrades. That's cool. That means it's been tested to high hell. There are tons of cartridges and loadings available. It's very accurate. I have easily shot to several hundred yards with a 9mm pistol, and I've shot to 400 and 500 yards with a 9mm carbine. I've seen guys hit steel at 300, 400, 500 yards with a pistol. I'm not that capable with them, but 100 yards, 200 yards is very easy to do. This little cartridge is only dropping 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 inches, depending on the velocity, at 100 yards. That means if I aim here, it's going to hit here on a torso. Somebody would say in a self-defense shooting that's not necessary. My point in bringing it up is you don't know what's necessary, 1. 2, understanding its limitations. If I'm 50 yards and in, I don't need to hold over or under. This thing's going to do its job provided I've got a good zero and I do mine. So that's comforting. Most of these cartridges are going to have that same type of a trajectory at these 50-yard and in distances, but this one again gives me more opportunities to hit, gives me more opportunities to stop. So it's been around forever. It's been tested to high hell. There's all kinds of loadings for it, and there is tons of real-world data that now says that there is no more efficacy for these cartridges than for this. The number one factor is relevant hit, meaning hitting the thing that matters, the switches and the pumps, right? CNS and the cardiovascular system, and continuing with that effort until the violence stops. I hope this discussion was helpful. I hope that you guys check out my good friends at Super Bell Ammunition. They're awesome people making awesome products made in the USA. They're not some big corporate puke-owned company where they're just more interested in making more money. How do I know that? Because through ammo crunches, they have worked very hard to keep the prices low. They've worked very hard to purchase things in bulk when stuff's available, so that as things get crazy, they can kind of even out those spikes in prices. They're not gouging people. 8 years, 7.5 years, I've been working with Cameron and now Mike and his lovely family. They now part owners there. Great people. Check them out. Hope this little discussion was valuable to you. If you wonder why not this cartridge or that, here's my 2 cents about the 9mm. Are other cartridges awesome? Yep. Something else worth noting. There are so many loadings, or so many firearms rather, available, from monster double stack 2011s to little tiny P365s and single stacks way smaller than this in that same cartridge. So you can kind of get the ammo and then find the firearms to transport it. I am partial to the Glocks. A 19 can't go wrong with. I can go from anything from the standard 15 round mag, and if I wanted to, you know, I can put something like this dude in there and have all of that ammunition if need be. Mickey with CarryTrainer.com. Be well. Don't be dickheads. Tell somebody you love them. Check out some of our wares. That's cool, from Super Bell. One of their 9mm expanded. This is the solid copper. I'll put that in the vid somewhere. Talk to you soon, kids. Bye. Oh, hey.